Have you ever stood in the middle of life's storm, feeling like everything was spinning out of control? Your job, your family, your health, your dreams, wondering if there was any way to make sense of it all. Many people live there, waking up each morning with minds filled with noise, hearts weighed down by uncertainty, and souls craving peace. But what if I told you there's a way to cut through the confusion, to replace fear with faith, to see clearly when everything around you screams chaos? That's what we are about to uncover today. Stay with me, because by the end of this message, you'll hold the key that has turned countless lives around. Chaos doesn't ask permission. It shows up uninvited, sometimes as bad news, sometimes as betrayal, sometimes as dreams delayed so long you wonder if they'll ever come true. It piles up until you feel like you can't breathe. But here's the truth: chaos is loud, but it is not final. There is a moment when the storm meets something stronger, something deeper, something that doesn't just calm the outside noise, but reaches inside your heart and gives you unshakable clarity. That moment begins with prayer. Prayer is more than words. It is not a ritual you rush through before breakfast or a last resort when nothing else works. Prayer is the meeting place between human weakness and divine strength. It is the bridge between confusion and confidence. When you step into true prayer, the kind that goes beyond routine and touches the very heart of God, chaos begins to lose its power over you. Why? Because prayer doesn't just change situations, it changes you, it shifts your perspective, it opens your ears to hear wisdom you couldn't hear before. It takes the scattered pieces of your thoughts and gathers them into divine order. Suddenly, what felt impossible starts to look possible. The anxiety that screamed so loud becomes a whisper, and peace begins to speak louder. I've watched people walk into prayer rooms trembling with fear, not knowing what tomorrow would bring, and walk out with a confidence they couldn't explain. Nothing outside them had changed yet, but inside everything was different. They had clarity, and with clarity comes courage, the courage to act, to make decisions, to step into the unknown, knowing you're not stepping alone. You see, clarity doesn't just help you feel better, it gives you direction. It shows you where to put your energy, what to let go of, and what to fight for. It takes a life that feels like 100 puzzle pieces scattered on the floor and begins to fit them together into a picture you can finally see. That's what prayer does. It turns the noise down so you can hear the voice that matters most. Some people say, but I've prayed before and nothing happened. Maybe nothing happened on the outside yet. But something always happens on the inside when you pray. Sometimes prayer changes the situation. Sometimes prayer changes you so you can change the situation. Either way, chaos loses and clarity wins. If you want to break free from the noise, if you want to stop living in confusion, if you want the kind of peace that doesn't disappear when problems come, then learn to pray until clarity comes. Pray until the fear lifts. Pray until the anxiety has no room to stay. Pray until the path becomes clear. Because when prayer enters, chaos exits and clarity takes its place. So today, make the choice. Don't live another moment letting chaos run your life. Step into prayer. Stay there until peace speaks. And watch how your entire life begins to make sense again. Life often feels like a whirlwind of events spinning out of control. One moment you think you have everything figured out, and the next, unexpected circumstances hit you like a wave, leaving you overwhelmed and uncertain. Problems pile up one after the other, financial struggles, broken relationships, health scares, dreams delayed, and soon it feels as if you're surrounded by chaos with no way out. But there is one truth you need to hold on to. Chaos is temporary. It may feel permanent in the moment, but it isn't. Chaos has a beginning and it has an ending, and in between lies the opportunity for transformation if you know where to turn. When you are in the middle of a storm, it's easy to believe it will last forever. That is the trick chaos plays on your mind. It tries to convince you that the noise will never stop, that the pain will never heal, that the confusion will never lift. But no storm in history has lasted forever, and no night has ever been able to hold back the morning. There is always a turning point waiting ahead. The challenge is that when you are surrounded by noise, you can't always see that turning point. You can't always feel that it's coming. That's where prayer steps in and begins to work in ways you cannot always understand at first. Prayer reminds you that chaos is not permanent because it connects you to a power greater than the storm itself. When you start praying, you are doing more than talking. You are inviting divine order into disorder, divine peace into anxiety, divine strength into weakness. Suddenly, the storm you thought would crush you begins to lose its grip. The moment you begin to pray with faith, something happens inside you. The storm might still rage around you, but you start to see glimpses of calm on the horizon. It's as if prayer gives you the ability to rise above the noise so you can see the bigger picture, a picture where this chaos you're facing now is only a chapter, not the whole story. Think about the times in your life when everything felt like it was falling apart, And yet somehow things eventually worked out. At the time, you probably felt like you were drowning. You couldn't see the ending. But here you are on the other side of that chaos, realizing it didn't last forever. That should remind you of something powerful. If it ended before, it can end again. If peace came after the last storm, it will come after this one too. Prayer is what keeps you grounded during the in-between moments, the moments where everything looks uncertain, but faith tells you there's something more on the other side. Chaos tries to convince you to give up. It whispers lies that tell you things will never change, that you're stuck forever, that the pain you feel now will be the story of your life. But prayer speaks louder. Prayer reminds you that what you see is not all there is. It brings hope into hopeless places. It keeps you standing when everything else tells you to fall. Because prayer doesn't just talk about the problem, it connects you to the one who has the power to change it. And the moment you connect with that power, you realize this storm has an expiration date. Sometimes we want the chaos to disappear instantly, but what we don't realize is that while the storm is temporary, it often serves a purpose. It forces us to grow. It pushes us to our knees so we can discover strength we never knew we had. It teaches us to depend on something greater than ourselves. Prayer doesn't always remove the storm right away, but it does change the way you walk through it. Instead of panicking, you start trusting. Instead of giving into fear, you start holding on to faith. That shift inside your heart is what begins to break the power of chaos over your life. There's something incredible that happens when you pray in the middle of confusion. It's as if heaven leans closer. Suddenly, thoughts that were scattered begin to settle. Emotions that were overwhelming begin to calm. Direction begins to appear where there was nothing but uncertainty. Prayer doesn't always shout the answers. Sometimes it simply quiets the noise so you can hear the whisper of guidance that was there all along. And in that moment, you start to see what chaos was trying to hide, that this situation is only temporary. It will not last forever, and it does not have the final word over your life. When you begin to see chaos as temporary, you stop living like a victim of your circumstances. You stop letting fear control your decisions. You stop believing the lie that says nothing will ever change. Prayer opens your eyes to the truth that seasons change, storms pass, and new beginnings come. What feels unbearable today will one day be a testimony you share with someone else who thinks their storm will never end. I've watched people walk through tragedy so deep you'd think they would never smile again, but through prayer, they found peace so unexplainable it carried them through the worst nights of their lives. I've seen people lose everything, jobs, homes, relationships, yet through prayer they discovered strength to rebuild, to start over, to dream again. That's the power of knowing chaos is temporary. It gives you the courage to keep going when everything in you wants to stop. Prayer gives you perspective. Without it, all you see is the storm around you. With it, you start to see beyond the storm. You realize that the same God who calms seas can calm the raging thoughts in your mind. The same God who holds the universe together can hold your life together when it feels like it's falling apart. And the same God who has carried you through every storm before will carry you through this one too. So when chaos shows up, and it will, don't let it convince you this is the end. Don't let it make you believe you are powerless. You have the power of prayer, the power to call on strength greater than your own, the power to invite peace into the middle of the storm. And every time you pray, you are declaring that this chaos will not last forever. You are declaring that peace is coming, that clarity is on the way, that your story isn't over yet. Because chaos is loud, but it isn't lasting. It may roar for a while, but it always runs out of breath. Prayer is what keeps you standing long enough to see that moment when the noise stops, the sky is clear, and you realize you made it through. And when that moment comes, and it will, you'll look back and see that the chaos wasn't permanent after all. It was only a season, and seasons always change. There is a moment in life when you realize that the greatest battles you fight are not the ones around you, but the ones inside you. The confusion in your mind, the doubts in your heart, the fear of the unknown, these create a storm far greater than anything the world can throw at you. And in the middle of that storm, you often feel scattered, pulled in 100 directions, like your heart wants one thing, your mind argues for another, and your emotions run wild with no clear path to follow. That's when prayer steps in and does something incredible. It brings alignment. It takes the fragments of your thoughts, emotions, and spirit and brings them into a single, powerful focus. That's the power of alignment, and it is what prayer was designed to bring into your life. When you are misaligned inside, everything outside feels chaotic. You wake up in the morning with a list of things to do, decisions to make, dreams to chase, but nothing seems to move forward. It's like trying to drive a car with wheels pointing in different directions. You press the gas, but you go nowhere. Prayer takes those misaligned wheels of your life and straightens them out so you can finally move forward with confidence. That alignment doesn't just help you feel better emotionally, it opens the door for clarity, peace, and direction to flood your life. People often underestimate how much misalignment steals from them. When your thoughts tell you one thing, your emotions scream another, and your spirit feels disconnected, you waste time, energy, and opportunities. You second-guess yourself, start projects you never finish, walk into relationships you shouldn't, stay in places you've outgrown, and all the while you feel stuck, exhausted, and unsure. But when prayer brings alignment, it's like the fog lifts. Suddenly, you know what to say yes to and what to say no to. You know which doors to walk through and which ones to close. You stop chasing everything and start focusing on the things that truly matter. Alignment through prayer happens because prayer connects you to a wisdom greater than your own. Left on your own, you can only see so much. You can only process so much. You can only handle so much. But prayer opens you up to divine perspective. It allows you to see your life from a higher view, a place where confusion begins to make sense and random events start to form a bigger picture. Things that felt like delays reveal themselves as preparation. Things you thought were rejections turn out to be redirections. You begin to realize that life isn't falling apart, it's falling into place. That revelation comes when prayer brings your heart, mind, and spirit into alignment with divine purpose. I've seen people chase success for years, running after money, relationships, status, only to reach the top and feel empty because their hearts and minds were never aligned with what truly mattered. I've seen others walk through seasons of loss and pain, yet through prayer, they found alignment that gave them peace in the middle of the storm and strength to rebuild when they thought they had nothing left. That's what alignment does. It doesn't always change your circumstances immediately, but it changes you so you can handle your circumstances with wisdom and strength. When your thoughts, emotions, and spirit are aligned, fear loses its grip. Fear thrives in confusion. It feeds on uncertainty. It grows when your mind is saying one thing, your emotions are saying another, and your spirit feels far from God. But prayer closes the gap. It unites all parts of you under one truth, that you are not alone, that there is a plan bigger than what you see, that your life is guided by something greater than chance or chaos. That kind of alignment produces unshakable confidence because it doesn't come from circumstances. It comes from clarity of purpose and connection to divine strength. One of the most powerful things about prayer is that it brings inner peace even before outer problems are solved. People sometimes think peace comes when the problem is over, when the bills are paid, the relationship is healed, or the decision is made. But real peace, the kind that lasts, comes when your heart, mind, and spirit are aligned in prayer even while the storm is still raging. You walk through the chaos calm and steady because you are no longer scattered on the inside. You are no longer at war with yourself. And this alignment doesn't just give you peace, it gives you direction. When you are aligned, you make decisions with confidence instead of hesitation. You move forward with clarity instead of confusion. You stop wasting time on things that drain you and start investing in things that grow you. Prayer takes your limited understanding and aligns it with divine wisdom so that the steps you take actually lead somewhere meaningful. You stop wandering in circles and start walking in purpose. Think about an orchestra for a moment. Before the concert begins, you often hear musicians warming up, each playing their own notes with no connection to the others. It sounds chaotic, messy, almost unpleasant. But then the conductor steps in, lifts his hand, and brings everyone into alignment. Suddenly, what was noise becomes music. That's what prayer does in your life. It takes the random, disconnected pieces, the emotions here, the thoughts there, the dreams scattered all over, and brings them together under divine direction until your life begins to play a song of purpose and clarity. People sometimes avoid prayer because they think it's only about asking for things, as if it's a list you give to God, hoping He'll check it off. But prayer is much deeper. It's about bringing your entire being into alignment with the one who sees the beginning and the end, the one who knows what's best even when you don't. And when that alignment happens, you stop fighting yourself. You stop living in constant confusion. You stop chasing everything that looks shiny and start walking toward what is truly meant for you. The power of alignment through prayer is that it doesn't just change moments, it changes lifestyles. You start living with focus. You start making choices from a place of peace rather than panic. You start trusting the process because you are no longer relying only on what you see, but on the divine wisdom guiding you from within. And as you stay aligned through prayer, you notice that doors open at the right time, the right people come into your life, and even setbacks turn into setups for something greater. So if you feel scattered today, pulled in too many directions, unsure of what to do next, start with prayer. Not the kind of rushed prayer that checks a box, but the kind that pauses long enough for your heart, mind, and spirit to line up with divine peace and wisdom. Because once alignment happens on the inside, everything on the outside begins to make sense. There comes a point in every person's life when fear tries to take control. It shows up in many ways: fear of failure, fear of the unknown, fear of what people might say, fear of not being enough, fear that the future will not work out the way you hope it will. Fear has a way of creeping into your heart quietly at first, whispering doubts, planting seeds of anxiety, until suddenly it feels like fear is the loudest voice in the room. It pushes you toward panic, confusion, hesitation, and often convinces you to stop moving forward altogether. And here's the truth: fear is powerful if you let it stay. It can paralyze dreams, break confidence, destroy peace, and keep you from stepping into everything you were created to be. But there is something even greater than fear: faith. And when faith takes over, fear begins to lose its power. Faith does not mean you never feel afraid. It means you refuse to let fear control the decisions you make and the life you live. Fear shouts about everything that could go wrong. Faith whispers about everything that could go right. Fear focuses on the size of the problem. Faith focuses on the size of the one who can solve it. Fear wants you to shrink back, to settle for less, to stay in your comfort zone because at least it feels safe there. But faith calls you to rise, to step out, to trust in something greater than yourself, even when the path isn't clear. Prayer is the place where faith grows strong enough to silence fear. When you pray, you are not ignoring reality. You are inviting divine strength into that reality. You are saying, I see the problem, but I believe there is a solution. I feel the fear, but I believe there's a greater power working on my behalf. And the more you pray, the more faith begins to rise inside you until fear no longer has the final word. It's not that the situation instantly changes, it's that you change. You stop letting fear dictate how you think, how you feel, and what you do. You begin to live with courage instead of panic, with confidence instead of hesitation, with peace instead of anxiety. Fear often paints pictures in your mind of the worst case scenario. It exaggerates problems and shrinks possibilities. It tells you that your dreams will fail, that people will let you down, that you will never recover from this mistake, that the future is something to dread instead of something to embrace. And if you listen to fear long enough, you start believing those lies until they become the filter through which you see your entire life. But prayer interrupts that cycle. It takes the brush out of fear's hand and begins to paint a different picture, one filled with hope, possibility, courage, and peace. Faith over fear doesn't mean you suddenly understand everything. It doesn't mean you have all the answers or know exactly how things will work out. It simply means you have decided to trust even when you don't have all the details. It means you believe there is a plan even when you can't see it clearly yet. It means you refuse to let fear chain you to a life of playing small when you were meant to live with purpose and impact. I've seen people paralyzed by fear for years, afraid to start the business they've been dreaming about, afraid to leave the job that was crushing their spirit, afraid to forgive someone who hurt them, afraid to love again after heartbreak, afraid to take the first step toward a new future. And I've also seen those same people, through prayer and faith, rise up with a courage they didn't even know they had. They didn't wait until they felt zero fear. They moved forward in faith despite the fear. That's the difference. Faith doesn't always remove fear instantly. Sometimes faith simply gives you the courage to keep moving even when fear tries to hold you back. When you pray, something powerful happens inside you. The voice of fear starts to fade, and the voice of faith begins to grow louder. Instead of imagining everything falling apart, you start imagining what it would look like for everything to come together. Instead of expecting the worst, you start trusting that something good can come out of even the hardest situations. Prayer shifts your focus. It lifts your eyes from the size of the problem to the size of the power available to help you overcome it. And when your focus changes, your feelings begin to change too. Fear thrives in uncertainty. It feeds on all the things you can't control. But prayer reminds you that you were never meant to control everything in the first place. Some things are bigger than you, but nothing is bigger than the one you are praying to. That realization fills your heart with faith until fear has no room left to stay. You start waking up with peace instead of panic, with courage instead of dread, with confidence that no matter what the day brings, you are not facing it alone. Faith over fear is not about ignoring challenges. It's about facing them with a different mindset. The same storm that makes one person panic can make another person stronger. It all depends on whether you approach it with fear or with faith. And faith doesn't come by accident. It grows when you spend time in prayer, when you remind yourself of past victories, when you choose to believe that the story isn't over yet. There is a kind of boldness that comes when you let faith rise above fear. You stop waiting for the perfect moment when everything feels easy, and you start moving forward even when things are hard. You stop letting fear talk you out of opportunities. You stop letting it chain you to old mistakes or missed chances. You stop letting it keep you in places that feel safe but small. Faith pushes you toward growth, toward purpose, toward the future you were created to have. And here's the thing about fear, it only has the power you give it. The moment you stop feeding it with your attention and start feeding your faith through prayer, fear begins to starve. It loses its grip because it can't survive in an atmosphere filled with faith, hope, and peace. That's why prayer is so important. It creates that atmosphere. It fills your mind with truth instead of lies, with courage instead of dread, with confidence instead of hesitation. So when fear shows up, and it will, let it be a reminder to pray. Let it push you toward faith instead of panic. Let it become the signal that it's time to align your heart with the promises of God instead of the lies of fear. Because the moment faith rises, fear loses. The moment you decide to trust instead of tremble, everything begins to change inside you. Faith over fear is a choice you make every day. It's a decision to stop letting fear shrink your life and start letting faith expand it. And as that faith grows, you'll notice something incredible. The problems you once thought would break you no longer have the same power. The future you once dreaded becomes the future you look forward to. The dreams you once buried under fear start coming alive again. That's what happens when faith tacked. There comes a moment in life when you realize that confusion is one of the greatest enemies of progress. It keeps you stuck, circling the same mountain over and over again, full of ideas but short on direction, full of dreams but paralyzed when it comes to decisions. Many people don't fail because they lack talent, resources, or opportunities. They fail because they never gain the clarity they need to move forward with confidence. They stay in one place, waiting for everything to make sense before they act, and in the process, years pass by with nothing changing. That is why clarity is so powerful. When you have clarity, you stop hesitating. You stop second-guessing yourself. You stop wasting energy on things that don't matter. Clarity takes scattered thoughts and turns them into focused action, and that is where breakthroughs begin. But clarity rarely comes when your life is filled with noise. The constant stream of opinions, fears, and distractions keeps your mind spinning until you can't tell the difference between what is urgent and what is important, between what is temporary and what is lasting. That is why prayer becomes so essential. Prayer has a way of cutting through the noise and letting you see things as they really are. It quiets the chaos around you and within you until the next step becomes clear. And once you see that step, the courage to act follows close behind. Clarity doesn't always reveal the entire journey. Sometimes it simply shows you the next move to make. That is enough, because action leads to momentum, and momentum leads to change. Too many people wait for perfect certainty before they act, but life rarely gives you that luxury. Instead, prayer gives you the clarity to trust that one step at a time is all you need. You don't have to see the whole road to start walking on it. You just need to know the direction, and as you move, the rest unfolds. When you have clarity, your decisions become sharper. You no longer waste days wondering if you should stay in a place where you know you've outgrown, or keep holding on to relationships that are clearly breaking you, or keep working in situations that drain your spirit. Clarity gives you permission to stop living on autopilot and start living with intention. It gives you the strength to let go of things that no longer serve your future, and the courage to pursue things that align with your purpose. That's why clarity always leads to action. Because the moment you see things for what they truly are, you can no longer stay where you are. Think about how many dreams have died in the fog of confusion. How many books were never written, businesses never started, talents never discovered, relationships never healed, simply because someone was waiting for everything to feel certain before taking the first step. But clarity doesn't come by waiting. It comes when you lean into prayer, when you ask for wisdom beyond your own understanding, when you quiet the noise long enough to hear the still, small voice of direction. And once that voice speaks, you realize action is no longer as scary as staying stuck. There is a deep peace that comes when clarity arrives. The anxiety that once kept you up at night begins to fade, because now you know what to do next. Even if the whole picture isn't clear, even if the future still holds unknowns, the weight of confusion lifts the moment you receive direction for your next step. That peace doesn't come from knowing everything. It comes from trusting that the one who gave you this step will guide you to the next one too. Clarity also brings confidence. When you are unsure, fear thrives. You keep imagining every possible way things could go wrong, and the longer you stay stuck in that place, the bigger fear grows. But when clarity comes, courage follows. You stop overthinking. You stop letting fear talk you out of your future. You start believing that maybe, just maybe, things could work out better than you imagined. And that belief propels you into action, because now your energy is no longer divided between endless doubts. It's focused on moving forward. Sometimes people think they need faith to take big leaps, but most of the time, faith grows when you simply take the first small step of obedience after clarity comes. Each step builds momentum. Each decision builds confidence. Each move forward reminds you that action creates progress in ways waiting never will. And prayer is what fuels this process, because prayer brings the alignment and focus needed to see clearly and act boldly. I've watched people pray for answers, and then, when clarity came, they suddenly had the courage to make decisions they had been avoiding for years. Some walked away from toxic situations they once thought they could never leave. Some started the business they had been dreaming about for a decade. Some forgave people they thought they would hate forever. The clarity they received in prayer didn't just change their minds, it changed the entire direction of their lives. Because when you see clearly, you act differently. Confusion makes you passive. It convinces you that doing nothing is safer than doing the wrong thing. But the truth is, doing nothing is often the most dangerous choice of all, because it keeps you chained to the very place you want to leave. Clarity breaks those chains. It lifts you out of paralysis and gives you the courage to try, to risk, to step into the unknown, believing that something good is on the other side. And here's the beauty of it. Clarity doesn't just help you make decisions, it helps you make the right ones. It keeps you from wasting years chasing things that look good but aren't good for you. It saves you from relationships that feel right in the moment but lead to heartbreak down the road. It keeps you from investing your time, energy, and resources into things that don't align with your purpose. When you pray for clarity and then act on it, you start living a life of fewer regrets and more intentional choices. Clarity always demands action, because seeing clearly means you can no longer pretend you don't know what to do. The moment you recognize the right path, staying on the wrong one becomes unbearable. That's why some people resist clarity. They know once they have it, excuses disappear. But for those who are ready to grow, ready to change, ready to step into a better future, clarity is the greatest gift, because it turns hesitation into movement, dreams into plans, and plans into reality. So if you feel stuck, if you feel torn between options, if you feel paralyzed by the weight of not knowing what to do next, lean into prayer. Ask for clarity. Quiet the noise long enough to hear the answer. And when it comes, don't delay. Don't overthink it. Don't let fear talk you out of it. Act on it. Because clarity without action changes nothing. But clarity followed by action, that's where lives are transformed, doors are opened, and dreams begin to take shape, is over. Fear has no choice but to step aside. Life feels heavy when it is filled with disorder. Your mind races in 100 different directions. Your emotions swing from one extreme to another. And your days become a cycle of doing everything yet feeling like nothing is truly moving forward. You wake up tired even before the day begins, because chaos doesn't just exist around you. It seeps into you, shaping how you think, how you feel, and how you act. It makes you reactive instead of intentional, scattered instead of focused, restless instead of peaceful. Many people live their entire lives this way, moving from one moment to the next with no sense of purpose, no inner balance, no real direction. But life was never meant to feel that way. There is a higher way to live, a life anchored in peace and guided by clarity. A life where your steps are ordered, your energy is focused, and your heart is steady. That is what living with divine order is all about, and prayer is what makes it possible. When you live without divine order, everything feels urgent, everything feels heavy, and nothing feels clear. You keep saying yes to things that drain you because you can't see the bigger picture of where your life is headed. You stay in relationships that hurt you because you are too confused to make decisions that align with your worth and your future. You let distractions steal your time because you have no clarity about what really matters most. And the result is a life filled with noise but empty of peace. A calendar filled with activities but a heart empty of direction. That is what chaos does. It convinces you that motion equals progress, that business equals purpose, when in reality, without divine order, you can spend years moving fast and getting nowhere. Divine order is what happens when prayer aligns your life with God's wisdom and timing. It is not about living a life free from challenges. It is about living a life where your steps are guided, your priorities are clear, and your heart is anchored no matter what comes your way. When you live with divine order, you stop chasing everything that screams for your attention and start focusing on what truly matters. You stop being pulled in 1,000 directions and start moving in one clear, intentional direction. Life begins to flow differently because you are no longer living by impulse or reaction. You are living by wisdom and purpose. Prayer is the key to divine order because it shifts the way you see yourself and your life. It takes you out of survival mode and places you in a place of clarity and focus. When you pray, you step back from the noise long enough to hear what truly matters. You stop living only for the urgent and start living for the important. The anxiety that comes from doing everything in your own strength begins to fade because you realize you were never meant to carry life alone. Prayer reminds you that there is a greater plan, a greater wisdom, and a greater power available to guide your steps. People sometimes think divine order means everything in life becomes perfect overnight, but that is not true. It doesn't mean challenges disappear. It means you face them with peace instead of panic. It doesn't mean you never feel pressure. It means you stop being ruled by it. Living with divine order doesn't remove all the chaos around you, but it does remove the chaos inside you. It gives you the strength to say no when you need to, the courage to let go of what is no longer serving your future, and the wisdom to focus on the things that align with your purpose. When divine order begins to shape your life, you notice the difference almost immediately. Decisions become clearer because you are no longer rushing through life without thinking. You stop wasting energy on things that are not part of your assignment. You stop holding on to people who pull you backward instead of forward. You stop living by impulse and start living by intention. That inner balance begins to change the way you show up in every area of your life, your relationships, your work, your dreams, and even the way you see yourself. I've seen people live for years in constant confusion, saying yes to everything, burning themselves out, trying to control everything and everyone, only to realize they were living completely out of order. It wasn't until they began to pray, to truly listen for divine wisdom, that they started to see what needed to stay and what needed to go. They began to prioritize what mattered most instead of what screamed the loudest. They started saying yes to the things that brought peace and no to the things that brought chaos, and slowly their lives began to reflect balance instead of burnout, peace instead of panic, purpose instead of pressure. Living with divine order also affects the way you handle time. Without it, time slips away while you are busy doing everything except the things that truly matter. You keep putting off what you know you should do because distractions feel easier in the moment. But divine order helps you value your time differently. You begin to see it as a gift you don't want to waste. You start making decisions that align with your future rather than your impulses. You begin to structure your days with intention instead of running on empty, and that brings a sense of control back into your life that chaos tried to steal. And here's the most beautiful part: divine order brings peace. Not the kind of peace that depends on everything going right, but the kind of peace that stays even when things go wrong. It's the peace of knowing you are exactly where you need to be, doing exactly what you need to do, because your life is aligned with something greater than yourself. It is the peace of knowing that the same wisdom guiding your steps today will guide your steps tomorrow, even when the future feels uncertain. Living with divine order doesn't mean life becomes easy. It means life becomes clear. It doesn't mean you will never face storms. It means you will face them with an anchor. It doesn't mean you will never have hard decisions. It means you will make them with peace instead of panic, because once prayer brings divine order into your life, confusion no longer has the power to control you. So many people keep waiting for life to slow down so they can find peace. But life rarely slows down on its own. Peace doesn't come from less noise on the outside. It comes from more order on the inside. It comes when you align your priorities, your decisions, your time, and your heart with divine wisdom instead of living in reaction to everything around you. And once you taste that peace, once you experience the freedom of living with divine order, you never want to go back to the old way of living in chaos. If you feel like your life is spinning out of control, like you are constantly busy but never fulfilled, like you are always moving but never at peace, it is time to invite divine order into your life through prayer. Ask for wisdom to know what really matters. Ask for courage to let go of what doesn't. Ask for strength to live with focus and clarity. Because when divine order takes over, everything begins to change. Your days gain direction. Your heart gains peace. Your life gains balance. And you begin to live not just with motion, but with meaning.